So hello everyone, I'm Højen and I'm an implementation support specialist here at SNOMED International. I want to thank you all for joining this implementation webinar today. As you can hear, if you are familiar with my voice, I'm in the unfortunate situation that I have caught a bad infection. So fortunately, I have my good colleagues here, Alejandro, Lopez, Osornio, and Kewley, so I can assure you that you're not going to listen to this rusty voice for the whole webinar. So we have spread out the efforts today. So let's get started on the webinar, and today we focus on our mapping tool, Snap2SNOMED, and we're going to give you an update on the features and not least the newest enhancements to the tool. So here you see the outline for the session. First, Kai will give you an introduction to Snap2SNOMED and some background on the use cases for the tool. Then Alejandro will take over and talk about the basic functionality, showing you the single author, single reviewer workflow. Then I will give you an overview of the newest features, and we'll also do a demonstration of these and focus more on the dual blinded authoring workflow that is now supported. At the end, Kai will take over and talk about what you do when you have the map. Once you have produced the map and finalized it, how is it that you get it deployed and utilized in your implementation of SNOMED CT? So that is the outline. And please do raise any questions you have in the chat, and then we'll make sure to answer to our best. So Kai, I will hand over to you.
Great, thank you, Anna. Hopefully you can see my screen. All right, so I'll do the introduction of Snap2SNOMED and the background, objectives, and the use case. So SNOMED International is committed to supporting the adoption of SNOMED CT at both the national, regional, and local level. And many implementations require existing code systems to be mapped to SNOMED CT to harmonize them. And to support implementers with this effort, Snap2SNOMED tool has been developed with the help of our suppliers, CSIRO, to assist in the development and management specifically of simple maps to SNOMED CT. Kylin from CSIRO is in the audience here with us today. So if we've got any very difficult questions that we can't answer, we'll call her out. So implementing SNOMED CT is a journey that takes time. And right from the early start, at level 1, mapping is often a key part of that journey. So we have a best practice recommendation to use SNOMED CT for clinical documentation and data entry to, record detailed SNOMED CT concepts at the point of care. However, maps may still be needed to harmonize existing data and existing code systems, particularly for active patient records. So mapping may be required even at the data entry level. So it's there at level 1, and it can be used throughout the implementation journey. So you're starting your implementation journey to implement SNOMED, and there's a few common scenarios. You may have a local code system. It could be an interface terminology. It could be a legacy code system. Maybe it was part of your original EHR when it was adopted. You may also have some domain-specific code systems. Maybe they're specific for cancer or dentistry or mapping. It's also common to use a classification system, and that could be for billing, or it could be for some types of high-level reporting and statistics. So these are all, really strong and common use cases for mapping, and mapping can provide a way to harmonize these variety of code systems by linking to a common reference terminology, SNOMED CT. So let's briefly summarize these use cases. So firstly, the migration of systems will often involve maps from an original code system to the newly adapted code system, such as SNOMED CT. Another slightly less common scenario is data entry. So if you have an interface terminology, and maybe there's a very specific part of your system where you would like to keep using that interface terminology, then a map could be used. Users could continue using the existing interface terminology and map to SNOMED for the added semantics. Another common use case is reporting and data analytics. Maybe you have some longitudinal reporting that you want to retain, so mapping to SNOMED could be a good way to achieve that. Knowledge linkage. So it's common to map out to another source of knowledge, and this may be necessary to support some types of clinical decision support. And finally, a big one is interoperability. So maps are central to communication between systems and different data providers. Now, when we go out and talk to implementers, it's really common for us to see that they have started, if they've started some mapping effort, they've probably started using a spreadsheet. And, it's really understandable why. Everyone, knows spreadsheets, they're familiar, it's easy, you've probably already got it on your machine. It's very understandable to start there. However, unfortunately, in the long run, spreadsheets can have a detrimental impact on the quality and accuracy of your maps. For example, there's no way to automatically limit the scope of the map to a certain area of the hierarchy. And maintaining maps over time can be difficult as the code system evolves and maybe concepts become inactive over time. So this ultimately can lead to poorer data quality in clinical systems if maps are maintained this way. So the vision statement of Snap to SNOMED is a tool that can support implementation of SNOMED CT by enabling users to collaboratively create and maintain simple maps using an open access and free tool to SNOMED CT using a guided approach. I'm going to hand over to Alejandro, who's going to cover the basic features.
Thank you, guys. So let me start showing my screen. And these are the basic functionalities that were present in SNOMED for almost 2 years now. And these are trying to fulfill the use cases described by Kai. Yes, and then Anne will guide us through the new features, the new things that we added to SNOMED this year. So basically, Snap to SNOMED allows you to create simple maps to SNOMED CT. By simple maps, that's trying to differentiate from complex map. As you know, the map from SNOMED to ICD-10 is a complex map because there are some rules involved depending on the age of the patient, the gender of the patient, and some other attributes. So in this case, these are simple maps without rules. Snap to SNOMED is online, it's easily accessible by everyone. It has collaborative workflow features that we will show, and they're enhanced in the new version. There's a support for map automation. When you have an interface terminology or very clinical terms that are similar to SNOMED, it's possible to run an automatic mapping process. There's a big part of the workflow features that you can review the map. The UI is prepared for you to be comfortable working with others and contributing to supporting the map. It allows you to import your own code sets and your existing maps. It exports to very useful formats, so you can use the map content in your system in many different ways. And also it provides you like a history of all the actions over the map, about who made the map, why, what discussions were taken or created the map, and things like that. In 2021, we also introduced a new map format, which is SNOMED supports the simple maps with correlation, which is an extension of the simple map. The simple map is just two codes, source and target, being source, your terminology that you're uploading your local code system, and target is SNOMED. That's why it's mapped to SNOMED. But in this case, SNOMED is supporting also one more level, which is the map with correlation, which is assigning a qualifier to that relationship to say if the source and the target are identical, or one is broader or narrower than the other, and you have all these values that you can assign. When you use the map, you can either use it as a simple map without any correlation value, you ignore that column, or you can use it as a correlation map, but maybe you can implement different features. The simple workflow that was included since the beginning is the workflow in which you import a source code set, a list of concepts in your terminology that you want to map. Each source code can be assigned to a mapper, and the mapper selects the best target code for that. And then that source code goes from draft to mapped, and the mapper sets the map status. And then you can assign all the mapped concepts to a reviewer, and the reviewer can select each one of the mapped concepts and either approve or reject them. Yeah? So that's the classic workflow for SNOMED. Probably many of you are already familiar with this, but we will like to do a demo to show you how it works. Yeah, so let's go back to the homepage of SNOMED. Remember that to log in SNOMED, you need to have your Confluence account, and you may need to request access to info@snomed.org, depending on how you created your account, but they will give you the permissions. So let me show you how you create a new map in SNOMED. And previously, this was not here, and Anne will talk about this, but we will show the single author mode, which is the way we released the tool some years ago. Test map in webinar for 2024. Yes, and you should always assign a version of the map and a description. These are all the values of a code system and concept map in Fire. You will realize that. And then you select your concept list. You can upload any file. We have some files uploaded here for testing, like this common diseases one. This imitates a list of terms, clinical terms that you can have in your system, in an old system. And then you say to which edition of SNOMED you want to map. So I choose the international edition, and the latest edition is loaded. Sometimes you may not find the right edition you want, and we encourage you to send an email to info@snomed.org, so we make sure that all the editions are updated. Then you can say to which part of SNOMED will you map to, and you can either map to any SNOMED code, or you can restrict the SNOMED content to some portion of SNOMED, to a subset using an ECL. And in this case, because it's a list of diseases, I will map to clinical findings. So I go to the browser and copy the concept ID, or let's copy only the concept ID of clinical finding. And I say all the descendants of clinical finding. Let's remove the terms of the case for the test. You can import an existing map. You can say, okay, I already have a map that is partial, and I want to review it, or I want to complete it. So you can import if you have one. And you can invite other people, like I can invite Kai and say, let's make Kai a member of this map. Yes. And then you save, and you're presented with this window. Yes. And this window has your codes. Imagine that this D1, D2, D4 to D25, these are the codes and the terms in your legacy system. This is an old system that you're using that doesn't have SNOMED, that you code by selecting terms from a custom list that someone created in your system, and you want to assign a SNOMED code to each one of them. So what you can do now is you start the other work. And to start the work, you need to create tasks. Yes? And to create tasks, you can either create author tasks or reviewer tasks. Let's do first an author, these maps. And I will assign everything. If it's a much larger terminology, this is really short because it's for the demo. You can assign a few of them to a user and a few of them to other user, or by batches or something like that. So I am assigning all the codes to map to me as an author. Yes, and I'm giving me the instruction to author this map. Yes. Now I can go and open the task that is assigned to me. I can either click here on the right, and this will open the task, and I can see that the task has not made much progress, or I can go here and select from my assigned task, and I select one of these. And this is how I can start working on the map. One of the options, yes, is that I do something like I search. For example, I see that the first concept on the list is heart disease here, and I can search on the box on top. I can grab from here and drop it on the heart disease line. And when it's dropped, it will take a second and it's saved as an inexact map. And I can say, okay, this is actually equivalent and this is mapped. It's not a draft. I like it. I will not review this later. I will send this to the reviewer. So I click it and put it on as map. Other option you have to work on this is to actually open with this panel, and you get like a more full screen search for that. Yeah, so the term is cancer, and there has been a search already. The tool typed cancer for me on the box, and I see the results of the more similar diseases. The matches are not exact matches. There's some intelligence around that. And that's one of the benefits of using a tool designed for mapping. And I can say that malignant neoplastic disease is equivalent to cancer. So I can drag it and drop it here in the equivalent section of the map. Yeah? And I have it there. And then I can click here to make it mapped, or I can click here to make it mapped, and I can go to the next value, yes? But also I can go back to the map, and the other option is that you can open your task and you can click on Automap. If you click on Automap, the process will go through making a request for each one of the pending concepts, and it will try to find the right map to each one of them. So if you click there, you can see how from the 23 codes that they had to map, 21 were mapped, yes. So we can see how chronic lower respiratory disease was chronic disease of the respiratory system. Yeah, so for example, in this one, the map, we can say it's mapped, but the value is actually broader. Yes, or I can enter and replace it. Or for an intentional injury, for example, it was not possible to find a close enough map. And if the candidates it found they're not similar enough, then you need to do it yourself. So maybe what you do is just code injuries. And you say multiple injuries, which is broader. And you add it there, yes, and you assign it. And in this way, you go through all your map, yes, and you try to finish that. When you do finish all the maps you have assigned, it's a time to start thinking about the review process. You go to the second page, I think there's one. This is a map. For some maps, RPI deficiency, they say, okay, this is a completely ununderstandable, we don't know how to map it. You can click in no map, and this means that this will not have a target. Yeah, so in this case, you can say that this is mapped with a no map value. And if you want to say, okay, I trust the system for all the rest, yes, you can do something like selecting with the 25 concepts on the top and do a bulk edit, and you can do something like, let's set them all to, and moving my screen to mapped. Yes, okay, so now everything is mapped. Now what I can do is go back to the map, and I can, in the tasks, I can create a review task instead of as an outsourced task. And I can say all the concepts assigned to me as a reviewer. Ideally, you will have a different person as a reviewer, but maybe you're low on resources and you do this in 2 stages. You work on the map for a week and then you work on the revision the next week. There's a policy that ideally you should assign a different one, but you can click this button to allow the same reviewer. So create a task with 25 sorts, omitting, preventing, create a task. And when you have, it's my face everywhere. When you have more than one task, you can select from here. You can select the review task. And when you go through the review task, you can go one by one, look at them and say, okay, this is accepted. Next one, this is accepted. Next one, and if you have to make any changes, you just make the changes you need to make. Yes. And you go through the whole map accepting the different values. And you can see how going through these 2 stages ensures that the quality of the map is better. And also compared to the spreadsheet that Kai was saying, in the spreadsheet, the number of people who have reviewed the map or have validated the map is lost. Yes, sometimes you write on top of each other and things like that. You can add columns for reviewers in the spreadsheet, but it's really difficult to make it sustainable. When you are finished with that, when you have all, here you see how I reviewed before, you're ready to export your map. Yes, you can export your map and you can export your map in different formats. You can export in a comma separated format, in a tab separated format, or in an Excel file. These 2 ones, the Fire and extended Excel file, are new, and Kai and Anne will describe them later. But typically, you will download these maps, and then you will decide what you want to do with them. And we have a section of the presentation at the end in which we show you the different options you have to see how you can actually use or take advantage of the map. I think there's a question on the chat room.
Yes, I just provided a very brief answer to the underlying, the question about the underlying automap function.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And the term that you provide as the source code is the one that is matched against all the descriptions in SNOMED CT. So that's one of the benefits of SNOMED CT, that you can associate many different terms to a single concept to provide the synonyms. But that also gives the opportunity now to match against any of the synonyms that you use or that exist in SNOMED against the source code. So,
yeah. And it's a
that's the
partial
magic behind
matching
that.
algorithm. Yeah, exactly. And there's different strategies of partial mapping and comparing the options with the source concept to see if it's similar enough to be selected as a good candidate. So it's not simple string matching. It's more complex. There's a normalization in the middle and things like that. The actual implementation depends on the server you have in the background. Right now, Snap2SNOMED has Onto server in the background, so it uses Onto server automap algorithm. But if you switch to a different Fire server, there's some freedom on how you can implement the auto-matching algorithm. There are some guidelines about what are the expected patterns. And how to delete the map concept if you already find it after authoring. If you want to change a map, usually you need to recheck in revision, and then you can perform the change in the map. I think we answered the questions.
Yeah, I think if we don't respond to these questions, Mikko, we'll give you permissions to talk at the end so we can discuss it and make sure that you see what it is you are missing. About deleting map concept, I'll show you soon.
Yeah, and for the 100 search result limit, you mean inside when you're looking at the detail of a map row and you search for something, you're presented with a list. 100 is already very large for you to manually choose from them. But well, yeah, there have been no changes to the mapping algorithm in the new version, if that's the question. but we can work with you, especially Miko, to understand the details and if there's something that can be improved. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the classic snap to SNOMED. Now we move into the news.
So I will start to share again. Alejandro, can you confirm that you see my slides?
Yes, I can see you as well.
Super. Okay, so we have been looking forward to showing you the newest features of the tool. There was just a new tool released at the end of the year of last year with a range of new features. And even before that, we also had a year before that, I think we also included a few extra features that we haven't introduced at a webinar. So this will also give us a chance to show you that now. So this is the summary list of the newest features that are included. And for those of you who have been using the tool for a while, such as Miko, as you see it in the chat there, in the old days you had to go through like a 2 or 3 steps process to log in, but now we have a streamlined login process, so very simple that you just enter your account credentials and then you are into the system. So that eases the login process. Then we are now supporting replacements of inactive concepts using the historical associations of the SNOMED CT release. So if in the past we just had a small flag, but now we have a mechanism to actually seamlessly select the new targets. And I'll show you that shortly. We now also have the ability that you can not only see the descriptions of a concept, but you can see the definition of the SNOMED CT concepts, providing it easier to ensure that you have found the concept of your interest that semantically matches what you're looking for. And then, as Alejandro said, we have some new export formats, and we'll talk to them too during the remainder of this session. And then, of course, the big thing in this the very big thing is the dual authoring mode that we now support, so that in contrast to what you saw Alejandro do, where you have a single author and a single reviewer, you can now have multiple people mapping the same concepts. So let's take a look at the support for replacements of inactive concepts. As Kai was saying in the beginning, one of the drawbacks of using spreadsheets for a map is that it's so difficult when you want to update to a new version of SNOMED CT. That manual step of going in and checking, are there any concepts that are now inactive? Are there new concepts that we should use? And so forth. That is very difficult when you're using a spreadsheet and you can't easily look up the release files. You have to go to the browser, and there's a lot of copy pasting with that approach. And the fact is that when you do a map, you need to if you devote to doing a map and using a map and using SNOMED, you need to establish the processes that are required to help you take advantage of the robust versioning mechanism of SNOMED CT, allowing the terminology to evolve over time and ensuring a high quality terminology. So in order for your map to also retain a high quality, you need to keep it aligned with the version of SNOMED CT that you're using. Sorry. So every time you specify a map, you say, what is the substrate for your map? What is the version of SNOMED CT that you're using? And then over time, you may want to update to a new version. And then you may find that in your new version, some of the concepts that you are using in your previous version have now been inactivated. And then we have the history mechanism in SNOMED CT, where we actually propose replacements for concepts that are made inactive. So let us go in and see how that looks. Give me just a second here too. All right. So I have created a map of common symptoms. And before we go into that, it is a map where it's again an imaginary, an example case, where I have these 10 codes for common symptoms. And in the past, when this tool was first launched, you could only have a source code, a single source code, and a single source display as your source code system. But now you can actually import additional columns. So here you can see that I have import, or I'm using a code system where there is a display term, but then there's also some additional information. It could also be a number or any other information that provides context to the source code set. So here you can see that there are some alternative display or some details, and I can import them to the system now, and it may support the mappers in understanding the source code better. So here I'm going into the common symptoms, and this one is also a single author, single reviewer map, as the one that Alejandro was showing you. But here you can see in my import, we both have the source code, the source display, and now also details. And you can actually have multiple additional columns in your source code set now. So if you want, so this table you see here can become very busy, but now you can actually then, if I don't want to see the source index, or I don't want to see the source code, it's more flexible now that you can say what is it you want to see in the view, and you can just take it on and off like this. Okay, so but when this first version was created, I specified that this should use the July 2019 version of the international edition. So this is an example where we can imagine we started this map many years ago, and we have been using it. But now we are updating our system to use the latest version of the international edition. And so we want to ensure that the map is updated accordingly. So let me show you how that is done. I'll go back to this overview of all our maps. And here we have the common symptoms map. And you can see what is the version that you are focusing on here. It's the first version, but now I want to create the new version. And it automatically increases. You can also, if you have another way of numbering your versions, you can do it as you please. It's the same, the source code set hasn't changed, but let's say I had an update to also the source code set. I would need to update that as a new version of the same source code set. That is possible as well. But here I'm saying I want now to use the international edition. It's the same edition, but this time I want to use the February 2024 version of the international edition. I don't want to change the scope. It's the same as before. So that's actually all I have to do in this case, simply specifying that it's a new version of SNOMED CT that I'm using. Okay, so now it has created this new version. You can see I'm in version 2. I can jump back to version 1 if that's what I wanted, but now we are in version 2. And now you can see that between these two versions, we now have these targets out of scope tags. In the past, when something was found odd with there was some error with the target codes, you would see a flag being raised, but now we have this more informative target out of scope tag. So let us have a look at what's going on here. I'll create a task for myself. I'm authoring everything, and I'm assigning it to me. So now I have my author task, and I can start to look at what's going on with these three concepts. So let us go in here. So now we have the respiratory system finding, and I can just delete it. So Miko, if I wanted to delete one, just delete it without doing anything. I could just click this one and then it would delete my target. So that I hope if I understood your question right, that was what you were asking, how I delete, and I do that here. But now I want to figure out why this was out of scope. And here you can see that it's actually clickable. I can click to find suggested replacement. And I'll just click. And now you can see that it shows me two alternatives where there's no warning. So they are not out of scope. So now I can delete delete this one. And then I can look at a bit of these and consider which one I find better for my case here. So disorder of respiratory system, respiratory finding. I'll use the finding one as it's a symptom. I'll just put it there. I find it equivalent. And then I'll set it to mapped. And if we then go out again, you can see that it has been resolved out here, and we are now using a new active concept. Let's go into the next one, complaining of cough. That could be me right now. I can. So I'll click this again, and this time it turns gray. And I was wondering about that when I saw it. So what I did was copying this, going into the browser, pasting in. Need to remember to search for both active and inactive concepts. And we can see as it is an inactive concept. I'll go to ref sets to better understand why it's not suggesting any replacement. And that you can see the reason why this one is inactive in the international edition is that it's moved elsewhere. And that's one of the only cases where we don't provide an active replacement, because it's moved to a different namespace. And you can see that that's the namespace that it's now moved to. So in this case, we need to just look at the feature that Alejandro was also showing you before. We need to then see what are the matches of cough. So there's a range of cough, and up in the front, there are the best matches, you would say. And I can drag that over and say I want to use cough instead. And I can now, sorry, I can now delete this one. All right, so that was 2 out of 3. Let's take a look at the last one. Fever symptoms. I'm clicking and it's suggesting a new one, feeling feverish. And I can just delete this, close it. And now we have resolved all the issues. Okay, so that is how the feature works in terms of proposing replacements of inactive concepts and using the historical associations within the SNOMED CT release. Okay, so the next thing is about the display of concept definitions. So where in the past you only were able to see the properties with the terms and the concept identifier, there's now a tab to show the defining properties. So let's go back. I'll just show you. If I click one of these. So now it's the pain in throat. You can see this has a finding site of pharynx or larynx structure. Common cold. If I go down, you can see these are the attributes for this concept. You still have the target properties with all the descriptions down here, and some more details about effective time module and associations or relationships, parents and children, if there are children. But this one is the new feature that you can now see the defining properties as well. And if there are groups in the concept definition, you'll see that there is a more bold line separating the different groups. So then let's look at one of the new export formats. So I'll just go back now. I believe it's just in the first version here. Yeah, so if you have a map, so in the the tool supports a full round trip. So in the old export formats, you could export these the source code display, the target code display, and the relationship and status. But there was a request to all sorry, to also being able to view the notes, because the notes feature, which has also been enhanced in the tool, if I just go into the author, you can see here, if I go into the details view, you can see notes here, and you can also delete, if you're the owner, you can delete, and you can also delete your own notes. So it keeps it easy to get an overview of comments that are made. And up here, you can even click here, and then the notes will show in this pop-up. So you don't have to go into the details view. But sometimes if you are in a group working on a map, you may want to export everything, to have a printed, people still like printed pieces of paper. And maybe you want to being able to sit there and read everything on a paper. And that's why there was a request to also have the export format include these. So in order to do that, you would have to select the Excel extended option. Oh, I have it there in my downloads. Here, I'll just increase this for you. And you can see here in the notes column, if I increase that one, you have the comma separated. Yes, a comma separated list of all the notes with the time, the person providing the note, and the note itself. So if you wanted something more intelligent where you have to separate each of the comments, you have a format now where you can do some post-processing if that's what you need. All right. I'm not looking at questions, so Kai, Alejandro, do we have specific questions at this point?
No, that we've answered the questions so far.
Super, thank you.
No.
Okay, so now let's go into the new workflow, which is the dual author workflow. So this is different from the one that Alejandro showed, in the fact that you now can provide two persons mapping the same source code. And this is good to ensure a high quality map, because sometimes you may have doubt whether one concept or another concept is right. And having two people selecting the same concept for a target code who understands the context and who understands SNOMED, so having two people selecting the same is a good indication that that's a good selection, and that is a good way to ensure that the underlying semantics is correct. And then in the cases where they select something differently, you may have a third person who wants to then reconcile, determine, make a further analysis to understand which of the proposals are the better one. So now we have this workflow with the reconciler, and you can say that the reconciler is like the reviewer. So you have some implied review in the fact that you compare two selections, and then you have a third person who can do any reconciliations required. You can still add reviewer, but the workflow is the best practice workflow is what you see here, where you then have the reconciler making the decision. So let's go into the tool and see how that looks. Yeah, and we've actually done it so that both Alejandro, Kai, and I will be able to see what we do. So we have a role in this. I'll just have to get Alejandro up here. So give me a second. So now we have the opportunity to see Alejandro's screen and Kai's screen, and you can also see my screen. So I'll jump a bit around. So here we are going into the common diseases map. It's actually the same source code as the one that Alejandro was showing before, but this has been set up as a dual author mode. So the same setup process as before, just clicking dual author mode when you start. It's not possible to swap workflow once you've started. So when you create the first version of your map, you need to determine, is it a single author mode or is it a dual author mode? So in this case, we've set up this project, which is a dual author mode. And both Alejandro, Kai, and I are members of this or owners of this map here. So now, in order to get us started, I'm going to start creating tasks, just as we saw before. But now we have 3 types of tasks: author, reviewer, and reconciler. So I'm going to say that Kai will be an author of all the concepts, and I'll assign that to him. We can look at the Q&A while it does it. Don't know why it runs. Okay, and then I'll create another one where I'll say that Alejandro is also authoring all the concepts. So they have to do, the guys will do the hard work, and I will make the decisions about whether or not who has right when they disagree. Okay, so the last task that I want to create now is a reconcile task for all the codes for me, and I'm assigning this. So now, if we move to, you can see here in my task list, I only have a reconcile task, but if I go to Kai and you update, you can see that there's now an author task for Kai. And if we go to Alejandro, if you update Alejandro, we should also see that you have an author task. Yeah. So now they are ready to start working on their maps. And I can just go in and show you what I see in my reconcile task. I see nothing because there's no disagreements yet. So because they have not put anything into a mapped status, when they start to do their maps, things will be in draft. So until they have mapped things and put them into a map status, once the same code has a map status for both authors, it will be compared. So you can have it in draft while you work on the map, but once you're ready for it to be compared to the others, then you can put it into mapped status. What we're looking here is Kai. Jumping over and seeing what Alejandro is doing. I'm going back and see where we are at my end. I'll just update and see, okay, so something has come in for me now. And there are some disagreements with concept number, source code D1 and source code D4. I get 1 row for each. I can see that this row is the row that Kai selected. This is what is Alejandro. I can see that someone provided a note. So I'll go in here in my reconcile and see that, okay, Kai has selected heart disease. Alejandro has provided the acute heart disease. So this is a leftover from when we last rehearsed this. But what I was going to say now is that I will disagree with Alejandro on this one, and I'll say that Kai is right in selecting heart disease, and then I'll add a note to say I don't think that the source mentions anything about the disease being acute, and then I will leave it to heart disease. And then I'll go put it away from the reconcile status. When the system sees that they are disagreeing, it will apply a reconcile status, making it visible for me. But now I can put it into MAT, and you'll see that it has now disappeared here from the list of things I have to reconcile. So now let's go into this one, the next one. And I can see that not only have they selected different codes, they have also disagreed on the target, source target. And in this case, I would say that Alejandro's the better one. I could write something. I'll just write comment for now. And I'll save this. And then that's it. Or no, what did I forget to do? I forgot to change the status, right? So I need to put it into maps. And then it will disappear. So this is a way where you can increase I'll go back here. You can increase the quality of your map by having multiple authors working on the same. And the fact that it's blinded makes the quality even better, because it forces, if you are able to see what the other is doing immediately, there is a risk that you, of some perception, will just pick the one that your colleague has chosen. So the fact that it's completely blinded will really help ensure good quality of your map. So do we have questions to this feature?
We had a question about auto mapping, and I've responded saying we haven't planned to demo that in this session, but we'll demo it at the end if we have time, along with the questions.
Yeah.
Otherwise, just reach out to us for a demo.
Yeah. Okay. So where are we on this? So that was the dual author mode with reconciliation. Yeah, and this is just a reminder that you need to click that mode in order to make that work. So now I will spare you from listening to my rusty voice and cough, and I'll hand over to Kai again to talk about deployment options.
Well done, Anna. Your voice held up. I'll share my screen. I need to jump a slide. So I love this audience. You're being very helpful. You're asking all the right questions. I hope we can fit in auto mapping, but there was also a question about the fire export, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. So you have a map. You've produced a map. It's been reviewed. You're very happy with it. You want to use it. What next? Let's look at the deployment options. So there's three main options that we've identified for deploying maps. Very common to use a Fire terminology server and to deploy a Fire concept map resource. It's a great standard. It's also very common to publish your map within an edition of SNOMED CT. Maybe it's within the international edition. There are a few. Maybe it's within your national extension. It can be published there as a reference set. The third one, which is maybe less common now, is if you have a legacy system, maybe it's not able to connect to APIs, maybe it's kind of offline, then maybe a traditional database table could be used for your map. And we'll talk a little bit about each of these. So the characteristics of the Fire concept map, obviously it's a very well-known standard format. The concept maps are versioned, so you're able to know which version you're using, and you're able to check that you're using the latest version that's available. It's obviously important. There's really good metadata coverage in Fire concept maps. For example, that it clearly describes what code system and what version of that code system you're mapping from and to, which is obviously essential. They can be included in a broader package, like a FHIR package. So it could be deployed with other terminology resources. And of course, it can be accessed over a FHIR API, which is another standard. So the characteristics of the SNOMED CT addition method, again, it's a standard format. The content can be versioned. It's a core feature of SNOMED CT is the versioning mechanism. There are some derivable metadata. For example, the version of SNOMED CT that you're mapping to. Currently, it's not machine readable to know what version of the source code system you're using, but obviously that can be included in documentation. Of course, it can be packaged with a bigger set of terminology resources. And of course, it can be accessed via a FHIR API or some other SNOMED-enabled tool. So it's very common for FHIR terminology servers to be able to import and use this format. So it's very flexible. Obviously, if you can take a map, it can be exported as a tab-separated value and use some script or some method to get it into a database table. There's a few pointers and things to be careful of. If you're going to use this method, please keep track of the version of the map, the other metadata surrounding the map, the versions of the source and the target code system, and try and keep it aligned with the terminology as it evolves. The database option is, quite flexible, and some developers are very familiar with it, but you can't just take a map, import it, and think it's done. You need to, make sure that metadata is very visible to the users of your data, and keep it aligned with the terminology. So thanks for the question. We're going to look a bit more into the concept map, the FHIR resource option. So one of the new features of Snap to SNOMED is the ability to put in some of the metadata which is required in a FHIR concept map resource. So there's a couple of new fields. Can I get a cursor? They're here, so additional FHIR metadata. So this is when you're creating your map and you're setting things up, and there's a plus button to add the source code system, the one you're mapping from. And it's at that point that you can put in the URI of that code system. This is like an identifier for the code system. You can also put in a value set. If there's a tight scope, which is the source of your value set, that's not necessary, but the code system at least. So then this information will get exported when you use the new feature to export the concept map. So it's here in the export menu. Anna demonstrated the XL extended format, and the one above is there, the FHIR JSON. So that exports obviously a JSON document, and it's the concept map resource. When I did this the first time, there was a couple of changes that I needed to make manually. It's worth reviewing a few of the top fields, like the status of the map, for example. You may set that to draft initially and read the FHIR documentation to see what that status should be set to. It's worth adding a URL identifier to the map. So in this example, which I'll demonstrate in a moment, I've added a URL using some domain, just so that the map can be found on a terminology server using that identifier. It's always the same on all terminology servers. I also found that I needed to tweak the target URI. I needed to remove the spacing and the terms from the map scope. And so I ended up with this sort of format where things are consolidated. But often, if you don't do that, when you upload to the terminology server, it should give you some hints around, what's wrong and what should be adjusted. And finally, the source code system, has to be set. So you either need to put the source code system in when you import your source data in Snap to SNOMED, or you can do it afterwards, after the export, do some manual tweaks. And then, of course, import it into a terminology and a terminology server and see it work. So let's have a quick look at that. So I'm going to be using Onto Server. It's a commercial product, but there's an open access sandbox, which I use to demonstrate this. So I use the Onto Server dashboard, and the existing concept maps can be listed and new versions can be added. Then I made a couple of file requests to test it out. So I was able to find my concept map using the URL, and that worked great. And I was also able to use the translate operation. So that's the operation where you actually do the mapping or the crosswalk. You've got some source code. This one's a map from the ATC DDD substance code, and here's an example code here. And I want to map to SNOMED. I've got another slide covering these parameters, but you can see the result here that the mapping has said this ATC DDD code is equivalent to this SNOMED code. So we've got the system, SNOMED CT, we've got the concept ID, and we've also got a display term. And equivalence is an important thing to look out for. This is R4 of the file specification. And if you're using R5, just be careful because the equivalence codes have changed. So just refer to the specification. Nearly last slide from me. I just wanted to have a slide to show the parameters around this. Obviously, it's difficult to see all in the address bar. So in this example, I was showing the concept map translate operation, and the API request looks like /concept map /translate, and the parameters that I used are the URL of the map, and that will be the same on any terminology server if you upload that map. I used a code, the source code that I wanted to translate, the source system. Obviously, these come as a pair. The Who ATC code system, and the target code system I wanted to translate to SNOMED CT. I'm going to pause there for questions. Actually, I'll go to the next slide because we're wrapping up, and now's the time for any other questions. We can answer them live, and if we've got time, we'll do the auto map demo. So if you've got any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A section, or you're welcome to raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can chat.
Can you update the slide, right? Maybe because I've just added something to this slide.
Have you?
Yeah. Because if this is the first time you see this tool and you are thinking that this could be relevant for what you're doing with SNOMED, maybe you want to engage some colleagues and it's not enough just to see the webinar, the recording of this webinar. You can always reach out to us at implementation@snomed.org, and we are happy just to discuss your use case and provide you with some advice if you need that, or otherwise, if you have any questions. We also have a user guide for this tool. So if you could go to Snap to SNOMED, just show that if you go to the 3 vertical bullets, there you can access the user guide, and the user guide includes a range of videos as well. We are missing the videos for the dual map workflow, but there's a description of it. So that's the user guide.
Notice there's also a short section on the automated mapping assistance. I could do, where will the recording be available?
Yeah, so could you go to snomed.org/webseries just to show. So we have a range of web series on this site, snomed.org/webseries. you'll see recordings from past webinars, both the clinical and research and implementation. And on the watch past webinars, you'll be taken to YouTube, where we have a playlist with all the previous webinars. And if you go to the web series again homepage, we can advertise a few upcomings. You can see we have 3 web series streams, one for clinical with a clinical focus, one for research. And you can see that there are actually sessions planned in the clinical area, one on February 21st and one on April 16th. And we have a research webinar coming up as well on March 27th. And it works the same way as this. Please do register in advance so that we can keep track of who are attending.
Maybe I'll jump back into the dual map and
Yeah.
I'll run the auto map feature just so that you can see it. But please reach out to us if you want a more detailed demonstration. So
Just a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So you were loading from Philip about cooperating on developing a particular map. Maybe if you represent the country, the member forum is the place to discuss these things and plan this kind of thing.
yeah, thanks, Alejandro.
Yep.
So auto mapping can happen inside a task. In this instance, Anna's already created a task for me, and you can either auto map just a few rows by selecting the ones you want. These ones are already mapped, so I'll pick some others. Or you can use these buttons at the top to select all the rows of your map. And
If you select all the rows, it won't override the ones you have already mapped.
I'm going to click auto map here, and it goes and runs, and it gives you, it's quite fast. Obviously this is a fairly small map, but it gives you some overall statistics. And I guess the key point here is that the status of these maps are set to draft, and you must go in and review them and check that they're suitable. And of course, it's nice to identify the potential target code, and here you can adjust it. If you want to keep this code, obviously you can move it to narrower, broader, or equivalent. The auto map algorithm will always put it in exact, which is questionable semantic value. You can probably do better manually to move these around. And if you're happy, you set it to mapped. It's worth noting that with the export formats, unless the map row is set to mapped, then it may not be part of the export. For example, the fire concept map will only export rows that have been reviewed and set to mapped. I can't see any other questions at the moment. Anna, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, we actually already covered that, but that's
Yeah.
just an overview of the upcoming webinars. And now you also know where to find the registration link. You can see in the bottom of this slide, snomed.org/webseries, so the short link. If you go to the next one, we can just announce that very shortly we will already be opening the abstract submission for portal for our Expo 2024, which is being held in October on the 24th and 25th in Seoul, Korea. We look very much forward to our yearly face-to-face expo, and we look forward to going to Korea and learn more about what they are doing there. So I would really recommend this event, and it's such a good opportunity to learn about what others are doing and realizing that there are other people in the world working on this niche with the clinical terminologies, and really just learning from each other and understanding how to really utilize terminologies within your system. you have the opportunity to submit an abstract where you can be accepted to give a presentation. There's also exhibitions and tutorials. Yeah, so there's a lot of things going on. Many things goes on at this expo, which is really a few days just focusing on SNOMED.
There's a question by Charlotte, very interesting on the question box about how to improve the chance of something being mapped, even if your extension is not fully translated, and the chance of translating to English. That's a good strategy.
Great one.
Yeah, but that's not done inside the tool. You need to translate those beforehand. But we have seen people translating to English to improve matching, but also we have seen people like improving the form of the terms so they're more similar to SNOMED terms. For example, if you're products, removing words that you know there won't be in SNOMED, adding some extra words that you know is the way the SNOMED terms are constructed. So some pre-processing of your list of terms can improve matching. Of course, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I agree. And so, for example, I come from Denmark and we have a Danish edition, but for each of the concepts, we have one, maybe two descriptions. We don't have like full coverage of synonyms, and not all concepts have been translated yet to Danish. So what I would do in that case is exactly what you suggest, but the tool, as Alejandro says, doesn't do it. So what I would do is to take my list of Danish codes, I would translate them to English, and then up on import, I would have the English term being like the source term, and just the Danish term being the alternative or an additional field, so that you can still see your native term as a separate column in the tool, but it will be the English term that is the source term. Because then if you use the international edition, it would match on the English description. If you are in a country where you have a full translation and you have well-developed synonyms, you can use that edition as the substrate for the scope of your map.
Yeah, so Snap to SNOMED's, really quite flexible. Enabling you to add other columns for reference during mapping, and it could be your native language. It could be, other columns that just give you a clue of the meaning of these terms. So it's a good way to support. In my experience of mapping local terms, you learn a lot if you just map, a small handful of codes manually to start with. You start to see, very common patterns in my experience. For example, there's a word which is a bit unusual and it's used, very often in the clinical terms. And there's another word which is maybe more common, that's the equivalent in SNOMED, and manually pre-processing those source codes or the source terms and replacing that word and running the auto map. Suddenly, you've gone way up in the matches. So a little bit of pre-processing goes a long way. All right, there's no other questions at the moment. No one's got their hand up.
No questions.
So I think we could wrap things up.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for attending. This was the first webinar of 2024. We really welcome any ideas and requests from you in terms of new webinars. So please also send us emails just to propose any topics that you would like to see covered in upcoming webinars. And even if you're aware of very good implementations, maybe you're part of a good project and you want to share, I'm sure that there is a whole community wanting to learn what you're doing, about what you're doing. So please reach out to us also for that. So thank you for joining.
Thank you very much.
Bye for now.
Thanks.
Bye.